What's up, everybody? Kristian Nylund here with the Sober Identity Podcast. I'm live from Austin, Texas today. And it's so cool. We've got the Sober Identity Podcast International Edition. I've got my very, very first guest on the podcast who lives across the world from us over in Melbourne, Australia. So I'm so excited for this chat. We actually met just on Instagram. Like I've said before, a lot of the podcast guests I've had have just been through connecting through that beautiful Sober network on Instagram. So I'm super excited to introduce Keelie Louise, all the way from Australia. Keelie, welcome on the show.
Thank you, Kristian. It's such a pleasure to be here. Super excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, this is so neat. And it's just wild to me that we could sit here and have these conversations from across the world, having never really met each other other than about 2 minutes ago when we got this thing fired up. But I obviously want to know all about your story, but I want to first start off and just introduce yourself to our listeners, who you are, what you're about, and we can kind of get going from there.
Yeah, so firstly, I just want to point out that we literally got the memo of blue today and we're twinning and we didn't do that on purpose.
Oh, yeah. I just noticed that too.
Literally the same color. Great minds.
Yep.
So hi, everyone. I'm Keelie Louise. I started my sober journey almost 4 years ago now. Completely changed my life, everything about my life. And now I use my background in that psychology, my background in positive psychology, which is just being able to try and make a difference in people's lives and bring their baseline happiness levels up from baseline to improve their overall levels of well-being. And so now I try and instill all of that into helping other people become the best versions of themselves.
That's so cool. I love that. Yeah, and I see that theme a lot with everybody. We finally make this cool decision and a really hard decision at that, to say, alcohol doesn't serve me and I want to go do bigger and better things. It's just so cool to see how everybody blossoms into that next chapter of your life. But I'd like to dig into, prior to this, how did you get to the point? Was there a moment? Was there a situation? Was it a thought? How did you finally decide that alcohol needed to be done?
All of the above. I think for me, I started drinking when I was 13. So where I was from back in the UK, there was absolutely nothing else to do. So we all on a weekend just drank. And we would wait outside a corner shop for somebody who looked like they were 18 to hand money to them to go in and get beer for us. It was just a normal thing to do. And I think for me, as somebody who had ADHD, suffered from depression, anxiety, all these other ailments growing up, it just felt like it was my comfort blanket, and that I used to say it was the only time that I ever felt like me, and the only time I could be me. Which is really scary now when you kind of look back on it. And I think there wasn't specifically one turning point. I think I'd known for a very, very long time that how alcohol made me wasn't necessarily normal. I think a lot of people will say to, have one drink, or just, you can just have one and you'll be fine. I couldn't. I just kind of, once I'd had one, it was like, woo, here we go, we're off. And you just kind of continue. So, and every time I drank, I think the older I got, the more I realized it started making an impact on me. I think as well, I'd spent so many years searching for answers. So I'd been to psychiatrists, I'd gone to the doctors and begged to see somebody because I just felt like I was going insane. 1 minute I was like high as a kite. The next minute couldn't get out of bed and just didn't have any energy. And I went on like this for a number of years, but searched and searched for all these little things that, I'll try just natural stuff. I'll try antidepressants. I'll try literally, you name it. I tried it. I tried eating clean. I tried exercising, but nothing was working. Like I just could not seem to get my shit together. And then as I got into my 30s and continued along this path, was still like, okay, I don't want to live like this. And it was actually, so the start, COVID happened, and we all have a little COVID journey. And I don't know how much you know about Australia and specifically Melbourne and the COVID journey here. Well, we got locked down for almost a year out of the time of COVID, so it was pretty brutal for us just here in Melbourne specifically. And I don't think any of us needed an excuse to drink, and none of us, everybody was just trying to do the best they could with what they had. The start of COVID, my grandfather passed away, and he brought me up my whole life in the UK. And when I moved to Australia, obviously he was still in the UK. In the start of COVID, he got COVID and passed away. And whilst it was a blessing, he was, going through a lot of health challenges himself. And I couldn't make it home for the funeral, didn't get a chance to say goodbye. And for me, that kind of sent me into a bit of a spiral where I just started drinking a little bit more. And it was always 5 p.m. somewhere in the world. You could start, you had to get through the day. And I also, for me, throughout COVID, I got stood down from what I did as well. So I was, similar to you, I was in the travel industry for like 20 years, got stood down. So whilst it was a blessing, as it meant that I could kind of focus on grieving and trying to move through that, it was also meant I had a lot of time on my hand. So the more I kind of went through COVID, the more I just started realizing that something else, needed to change. Wasn't at this point sure what that was. I know I'm kind of going around the houses a little bit here. But there was, and then it was towards the end, and we had like an illegal party. I say an illegal party, and there was like 3 of us in my apartment when, you weren't allowed anyone in your apartment. You all had to be within 5K radius of your home, which we were, for anybody listening. But we had a couple of friends back. 2 of them left and one of them stayed. And I was like, something switched in me. I was always the first person to go for the shots. And I was like, okay, it's that time. And I went to our cupboard and I got a $300 bottle of Don Julio out and started making everybody shot it. Bearing in mind, there was like a $60 bottle of tequila also in the cupboard. Needless to say, like, my ex-husband was not very happy with me drinking his tequila. And as the night progressed, I had this thing when I was drunk that I would sing musicals. And one of my new tricks that I learned throughout COVID was rap into the whole of Hamilton. So I proceeded to do that. And then I started on my other like party trick, which was play fighting MMA, because I also thought it was an MMA fight when I was drunk sometimes. Luckily, it never got me into any serious situations, and it was only with friends. And so this proceeded. And then I woke up the next morning, as I think most of us do when we had a big night, and we feel that shame, that embarrassment, that guilt, that like, and for me, probably like 95% of the times I would drink, I had no idea what I'd done the night before. I would completely black out because, I think that's a combination of having ADHD, the amount that I drank, and, just being able to let go of my inhibitions and be free. And my ex-husband said to me, do you remember what happened last night? And this was in between throwing up because, that was generally something that I would do the next day as well, if not all the next day. And my dog had eaten my sip. And I was like, okay, that's a lot. Like, you're turning 40 soon. What are you doing with your life? Like, is this what you want it to be? Is this where you see your life heading? And like, what does that look like? So I think whilst there was a number of turning points and a number of decisions, I think that was the key was like, dude, like you can't be like this. Like, you're acting like you're in your teen years. And so that was it. I was just like, something has to give. And yeah, and that was the turning point. I think it was the 22nd of October, 2021. That I took my last glass of wine. I have a picture of it somewhere that I was like, this is it. And yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I can absolutely say so much of what you just talked about. Like, it was very interesting the way you went through your story and talking about the anxiety and the depression. I can tell you with 100% certainty, that's exactly how I felt for so much of my life without actually realizing it. Until now that I've been sober for multiple years, I go, wow, I had no idea like that I was running with that much anxious energy in my life. And so no wonder when I reached for alcohol, I loved it. I loved it for so many reasons. It completely shifted that landscape for me. It just completely subdued my mind and my energy. And I was the same way as you. Once the first beer went down, it was like I'm going for six more because it just felt so nice to be in that state of mind. And I fought with that too of like, why am I depressed? Why am I in this like chaotic spiral that I just continuously like to put myself in? Because it's so worth it feeling that letdown of like, oh, I can breathe again. And we're willing to put up with all the pain, all, the vomiting at the end of the night or the next day or the hangovers that last for days. We're so willing to accept it. It's wild, but it makes such great sense. And I wanted to touch on the fact that you're, deep into psychology. How, with your understanding of that and being educated in that realm, how have you been able to plug that into sobriety?
I think the more I've gone along that sobriety journey, initially, again, like you don't want it to be alcohol. And I think for me, it was like, okay, I'll try it. If it's not alcohol, I can go back to it because it's my comfort blanket. But the more I started understanding it, the more I realized there's so much science out there. And we've been brainwashed as a society to believe that alcohol gives us so much, but actually it takes so much. So around one of the biggest game changers for me actually was this dopamine, the idea of dopamine. So that's why when you have your first beer, it feels amazing because your body is like, oh my God, look at all this dopamine. Yay, we're having a party. But then afterwards, like you're taking dopamine that you've not earned. It's not like you've gone out for a nice early morning walk or you've done exercise. Like you're stealing this dopamine. So essentially, it's like you're getting a mortgage on a house and you're owing all of this interest. So that's why after we've drank, we feel this intense crash of our dopamine. And we, like, say your base levels here, you drink, that's up there. But then once you come down, your base level's down here. So your body's just trying everything it can to bring it back up to that equilibrium and just that normality. And so that's one of the biggest things. Skin, like the impact that alcohol has on our skin. So if we have a heavy night, it actually takes 30 days at least for the alcohol and the collagen and everything to start working on our skin again. So if we're going drinking once a week and we're having heavy nights once a week, then your skin's not being normal. And it's interesting because one of the things that people say to me most is that, because I'm 41, I'm almost 42. And people tell me that I look younger now than I did in my 30s or even in my 20s. So, that was another big one, the impact it has on our sleep. Even just one glass of wine or booze or whatever can impact our REM sleep, which is what we need to be able to function. And it's how everything we've done in that day gets processed in that evening. So I think, for me, I switched the narrative from that. I'm having FOMO about being this fun party girl to actually, man, I'm having FOMO about looking like I'm 10 years younger. I'm having FOMO about not having a good night's sleep or not being able to create natural dopamine. And just circling back on that dopamine piece, I think it's one thing that really hit home with me is that, when people do have a big alcohol or even drug problem or any problem where they're getting this fake dopamine, if they're doing it over and over again, like their baseline is just dropping and dropping and dropping. And just to be able to bring that up, like it's no surprise that we've got all of these challenges in society when there's just so much out there telling us we're not enough and we're just grabbing onto these dopamine fixes where we can get them. So yeah, and that's just a small piece of like the science behind and what it does to us.
Yeah, dopamine is a huge piece of this. It might be the biggest piece, honestly. It was for me. And I don't know if you ever had any stretch. I'm sure you did in your drinking days where you would drink consistently. So it'd be like consistent days, I should say. One day, the second day, the third day. And so I would try to raise my dopamine levels. I would drink and drink. And then it'd be amazing how many drinks it took to feel normal or like a baseline, back to your baseline. So then I'm like, okay, sweet, I feel good again. Let me just tie on some more. And now I'm 4 days into it. And I am so wrecked, crashing off of these dopamine hits and it just completely sparks that vicious fire of anxiety. And there's been days where I've just been totally crippled on my couch. I mean, I think of it now and I'm like, that unreal. And I didn't realize how bad it was in the moments. I just chalked it up as like, oh, I totally overdid it again. Yeah, I drank for 4 days straight, but I'll recover. Give me another week and I'll be back on the horse. And I lived this way for a long time. And it got worse. You mentioned COVID. I have talked to so many people COVID exposed, and I've said this on other episodes. It so exposed my drinking habits, but more so it exposed all the chaos and pain and trauma that I had not dealt with up, for the last 40 years. I'm going to be 44 this year. And I'm like going back in time now of like, wow, no wonder I leaned on it. It was so easy, but it was just like a little snippet of hope, a little snippet of good dopamine. And now I wanted to ask you, what do you reach out to, or what gives you that true natural dopamine that you just love and crave now?
Oh, I mean, exercise is probably the biggest thing for me. I've always admired the mindset of athletes and their ability to just overcome anything. And I always wanted that. And when I was drinking, I couldn't because I could barely train twice a week. So now I train probably 5 days a week. So that is probably the biggest thing for me. Being outdoors, I love going for morning walks, catching up with friends and just laughing. I mean, I think that's the biggest dopamine hit you can get. Anything that just doesn't involve like my phone. And I think because I've got ADHD as well, I tend to gravitate more towards these fake dopamine hits. So I have to delete things like Instagram off my phone when I'm not using it, because then I'll just go to it and I'll try and get this dopamine high. I try and read a lot as well. I think for me, like reading and growing and learning is another thing that just gives me this pure sense of joy. Dancing, you'll notice a lot of my videos are just on Instagram of just of me dancing, because I just think what better way to just like let go and let loose than just dancing and to your favorite music and, so silent discos, all of that kind of stuff. And there's so much out there. Everybody's like dopamine hit list is completely different. But there's so many ways to get it. And just, for anybody listening who wants a bit of a tip and something that they can do on a daily basis, or, if you're having a rough time, write down a list of things that bring you dopamine and pure just joy in your life. Put them in a jar so that the next time you're feeling like you need to reach for your phone, or you need, you're wanting that glass of wine or whatever it is, pick something out, do it, give yourself that natural dopamine high just whenever you need it.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love your page so much. I was going through it today as I was on Instagram just to catch up on some of your content. And it's so apparent, like, hey, you look amazing, by the way. Like your before and afters, you could tell you've been getting in the gym and just you look totally younger, everything. It's so neat to see that. And I can tell that you do love to dance. You've got that personality, a lot of that energy, and obviously your username, which I freaking love, is the Sober Hype Girl. If you guys and gals listening, go check out her page, Sober Hype Girl. I actually use that not the same name, but I had Sobriety Hype Man on my deal. So I saw you, I was like, this is amazing. Like she gets it. We got to hype sobriety. And I think it's so neat that you're seeing this. And for anybody listening, you don't need booze to be that dancing person, to just have a smile on your face, to enjoy the little things. And so many people are caught in that trap of, I have to drink to have fun. I've talked to so many people that say that. It's like, I can't go to a function without a little bit of booze. Like it just makes everything so much more fun. Bullshit. Like you and I both know, I think about drinking now in those situations and I'm like, it's actually going to take away from my fun now because I'm going to lose my brain and my mind first and foremost. And then I'm just going to come off of that dopamine hit that's short and go, ooh, I don't like how that feels. And then you try to keep spiking it over and over and over. And it just does not work versus that nice, consistent starting at a high baseline and then just working your way up by doing those things, hanging out with your friends and dancing and smiling. So I think that is so cool. that you bring that up and that you're able to live life that way. And so my next question for you is, what was one thing about alcohol that you believed but now realize it's total BS?
Oh my gosh, that's a tough one because I think now I'm like so brainwashed the other way. It's like, what did I believe? No, you can't admit this. No, I think the biggest thing was that it was my comfort blanket. Like that it gave me something, that it allowed me to be fun. Like you just said, I thought that I could not be fun without it. And I think that is part of the challenge that we have in society. So I don't know what it's like in the US, but in the UK or even Australia, you go out on a big night out and you do whatever. So I was famous for side quests. I would go to a nightclub with my friends, and then they'd be like, okay, where's Keelie? Like, and they would always find me. I'd be in, I have a thing for R&B music. That was my jam back in the day. So they would find me in like the R&B club, like the R&B room of the club. And I'd either be dancing on the stage, round a pole, or just like dancing by myself. Or having, I'm also famous for dance-offs with random people who have no idea that this dance-off is happening. So I just win them all, which was amazing. And then, you'd obviously like be falling all over the place. It's not as sexy as it sounds. You're literally like, people are picking you up off the floor, but you're like, yeah, I've got this dance move. And I thought that was who I was. And I was like, how can I be that person, like, without alcohol? And, even after all those nights, every morning you would get, we didn't really have fully text. It was like 50 pence a text back in the day when we started going out. Similar with you, we didn't have like, you could text all you wanted. So you'd kind of run round to the phone box to call your friend or whatever. And they'd be like, oh, you were so drunk last night. And they'd tell you stories and you'd be like, oh my God, that's hilarious. But inside, like, you're cringing. So I feel like there's this big societal norm that because after a night out, you spend these conversations and now, there's videos, there's photos, there's all this proof of how hilarious and how fun you were, when really you're just completely white girl wasted and going through these embarrassing situations that everybody else thinks is hilarious. And that was the biggest thing, was this was fun. Like, and now I look back, it wasn't fun. It felt like fun in the moment. But how can you be, not be able to stand up, not actually put yourself to bed, falling all over, falling downstairs, have bruises that you've no idea where they came from? How can that be fun? And, I am going back to kind of the dancing thing. So recently my younger sister got married in Mexico, and she's 10 years younger than me. So a lot of the bridal party, all of the party were like in their 30s or late 20s. And literally all I did was outdance everybody. I was like hopping around the dance floor, like just having the best time. And everyone's like, where do you get this energy from? Like, you are just amazing. Like, how do you get this? And I'm like, well, this is like my fun. Like, I don't, want to have the tequila to make me fun anymore because I won't remember these moments. And so yeah, it's that fun piece that's just like was what I thought was what it gave me.
Mm-hmm. How did you address the fear aspect? I love asking people this because I struggle with that mightily. That was the biggest hurdle. It was like the tallest mountain I had to climb was, I am too scared. I know I want to do this like really bad. I'm really curious. I know I need to do it, but I was so scared. How did you address that for you?
I think that fear, and it sounds like you had a very similar switch. People don't change until the fear of staying the same outweighs that fear of change. And I don't think, no matter how much fear you have, until that tilt switches, then I don't think you can ever change as a person. And that switched, and you're right. You have this moment of like, I know that I'm not here. this is not where I want to be anymore. And this is where I want to be. But then there's this massive gray area of like, oh my gosh, like, what is this? How do I transition through this? Like, it's scary. And that's not the same. That's not just the same with alcohol. That's the same with any transition that you go through in life. You recognize that this is not where you want to be and you want to be here. And there's this gray, lonely area because you have to redefine everything, who you are, what you want your life to be like. And yeah, it's scary as hell. It really is. As you know, you've been there, but it's also beautiful because actually, you, and I'm sure, when you were growing up and you were going through these life changes, you didn't want to be there. Like in terms of, you always had these visions and ambitions that you saw yourself as. And I think we all do when we grow up. I mentioned before I started to you that I wanted to be an air hostess and travel around. I also wanted to be a whale trainer, but I can't really swim very well. So that and the shortness just, killing me. But there, you have to, I think the biggest thing of how to get over that fear is just what is that one step that you can take? What is that small one step? Because yes, this looks so overwhelming to get to here and where you want to be. However, you're not going to get there overnight. So the biggest thing for me was, what was that one first step? What is your why? Like, your why is the most important thing. You can say, yes, I want to stop drinking, but unless you know why you're doing that and deeply why, it's not just because I want to stop drinking. Like, understand all of the nuances of that and get really, really deep to understanding that why. And then understanding you, like, you have to recreate your lifestyle and what that looks like. And, I think that involves your community and who you surround yourself with and the things that you partake in. And it's not saying that you can't go out for a drink and, go out with people who drink. But what does that look like for you? And how do you want to interact with those people? Is that something you want to do? So I think for me, getting over that fear was just getting really clear on the person that I wanted to become and what that looked like. How do I align with that person? What are my values? Like, how do people who have these values act? So, I'll always talk about wellness for me. If I wanted to be athletic status, okay, what does that mean? Well, I make sure I'm getting enough sleep. I make sure I'm putting the right things in my body, make sure that I'm exercising and resting and all of these things. So it's, how can you align with that person? And I think you touched on this a bit before, like the community that we have in this sober curious space on Instagram is beautiful. Like, we are each other's biggest hype people. We are all rooting for you, whether you're sober, whether you're sober curious, whether you're just trying to be the best version of yourself. Like, there's such a hype thing out there. So I think as well, like, finding your community and what that means is also, because that fear is there, but what is on that other side of that fear is beautiful. And, I also talk about the time frame for me in terms of starting to feel good. And I don't know what this is like for you, Kristian, but for me, you've got like your 30-day challenges, dry July or whatever that looks like. For me, I don't think that's enough for a person to really start feeling the benefits of removing alcohol from their lives. So, I mentioned that I stopped drinking when I was 30, well, started drinking when I was 13. That was for 25 years of my life that I was drinking. I'm 5'3", so it's like, I tried to keep up with a lot of men that I would go out with, so I drank heavily. And 30 days to get alcohol from your body is not going to give you the benefits, and you're not going to see the impact that it can have on you. So I think that's why many people, they'll do dry July and be like, yeah, I can stop, but like, I feel good. But it's like, yeah, just hold on. Like, give me 3 months, give me 6 months, like, just try doing 100 days, whatever that looks like, and see, because you're not giving your body enough time. Like, society has hammered home that alcohol gives you something, and it doesn't. So yeah, there's beauty on the other side of this fear.
You touched on, I heard you say a few different things. Obviously, taking it basically a day at a time, going to get real with yourself of, hey, why am I drinking? And I say the same thing to people. I ask them, well, why are you drinking in the first place? If you're curious about not drinking, why are you drinking in the first place? And it's so funny. No one can actually just quickly blurt that out, right? Of like, well, here's why I'm doing something. Like you could do with, when you're training or working out, it's like, why do you work out? Well, I want to be healthy, but you can just spit it out within a second. But everybody else, they kind of take a deep breath and a pause, and you just know it's like, oh, we're getting into a touchy subject. And I was the same way. And looking back, I don't want to sit here and sound like I wasn't that same guy years ago, because I was totally in denial. I'd go stretches of time where I could totally quit. But I think that was more of it was an artificial way of like maybe showing others that like, yeah, I really don't have a problem. Look at me. I can go 30 days. So the 30-day thing I think is so valid. And I've told many that are sober curious that 90 days minimum, like you have to go 3 months, and it's scientifically proven. You can't argue with science. It will really start to show you like, oh, wow, it is a massive crutch for me, or wow, like I see a difference in the mirror. I'm sleeping better. And even still, people will fall off the wagon, even though they see all these great things, because they're still like, I can't leave my best friend. I can't leave this crutch. Like my life is going to suck. I am not going to have fun. And I thought all these same things over and over. So that's why I can regurgitate them. But it's a very interesting piece. And so I was going to ask you, if there is someone listening here, they're like, okay, this sounds great. Like two individuals that obviously are thriving after not drinking, and they want to make the change, like what details can you give them maybe of how their first 30 days actually looks like? Like what are the things that they might be seeing about themselves, or some things to kind of be aware of?
Yeah, I am so much. I think you will start seeing improvements. Like, we've touched a bit on sleep. So you'll start recognizing that you're sleeping better as the alcohol leaves. Probably the biggest fear, and I think that the biggest challenge that people will face within those 30 days. And I'm quite open about this. And we've touched on this slightly, and the reasons why we drink and this void that we're trying to fill. Because essentially most people drink because they are trying to fill a void, or they've got emotions that they don't necessarily want to deal with. So it's a way of just brushing them up under the carpet. And I think part of maybe why we've suffered from depression and anxiety so much, and I'm not sure if there's any scientific data around this, I'm just throwing this out there, is that the impact that alcohol has on us long term is that we are trying to fill this void, but the more we fill this void of whatever we're not trying to deal with from alcohol, the more these anxiety and depression and things creep in, because we're avoiding what we need to deal with, essentially. And also, when you drink, your body is trying everything it can do to remove the toxins from it. So everything like emotional processing, fat burning halts in your body. So you're not necessarily giving it enough I'm going somewhere with this. So you're not necessarily giving it enough time to kind of move past it. And I think in that emotional piece, that is the biggest thing, is that you have to start dealing with your emotions. You have to understand where they're coming from. You have to move past this trauma. And that starts coming up, I would say, in that first 30 days. So it's, again, understanding what your why is, why you're wanting to do this. Why do you reach for that drink? So really like understanding that, what do you think it is giving you that you can't get anywhere else? And having that conscious thought. And this is where the curious piece comes in. And I always say to people, like, I'm not here to tell you to stop drinking. I'm here to ask you to get curious about the potential impact that drinking could have on you. And maybe, it isn't for those first 30 days, it isn't about removing alcohol. It's more so about getting curious about alcohol. So in that moment of, I'm going to have a glass of wine, what does that look like for you? Why do you feel like you want to have that glass of wine? And, because I think one of the things we do is we use wine or booze to celebrate everything and commiserate everything. So in those moments, it's like, oh, I've had such a rough day at work. I really deserve this wine. Okay, but actually, yeah, that's the story that we're trying to tell ourselves. But what are you actually feeling under that? And then you'll notice that I have like quite a lot of watches on as well. So yes, I love my Whoop.
Yeah, these are great.
Love my Whoop. But, for anybody who does wear a watch or a ring or whatever that tells you like, check in your REM sleep or your just sleep in general, even after a glass of wine. What does that look like? How are you feeling after the first glass of wine or, the morning after? All of those things, like just get curious. And so I would say, yes, it is about trying to remove it. But for me, it's more so about how we can get people to be curious about it. Because I think the more curious you are, the more you start to realize that what we have been told about alcohol kind of is a marketing ploy, essentially, that, it helps us relax and it is everywhere. So it's challenging that. So I think for me, those first 30 days maybe is just about getting a little bit more curious and then seeing where that takes you.
Mm-hmm. The psychology behind this is fascinating to me. And I knew that it was going to be a combination of quitting drinking, but the more important elephant in the room was I got to handle my emotions. So I want to talk to you about this because for me, that piece alone has been transformational beyond just the drinking, exponentially so. The drinking covered it up, right? It just covered the top of the issues, and it was easy to just keep going, oh, I'll just numb it out. But as soon as I couldn't numb it out anymore, that's where the true work started to begin. And it was really another beautiful process. It gets ugly, it's dark, it's hard work. We call it the work for a reason. And so I wanted to see for you if you could share a little experience with that. If that's something that you've done, I've been very open on the show as far as telling people that, yes, I have done plenty of therapy. In fact, it was once a week for a couple years, sometimes a couple more times when I was like deep in it, like in the roughest, depressed, anxious states. I couldn't believe it. And I'm like, oh, this would be a moment to go drink, but I didn't do it because I knew that was totally going to screw up the whole process. So tell us, Keelie, have you leaned on therapy? How did you navigate a lot of the trauma and the emotions that you had been covering up for all those years?
Well, I mean, for me, I think what's growing up was so much anxiety and depression. And when I was in my early 20s, I actually took an overdose. I still to this day swear that I was never trying to end my life. I just never felt so empty and just trying to fill a void and just dull in my life. And I think I just wanted to stop feeling that way. So I have been to a lot of therapy. I've tried many different forms of therapy. And yes, while I think some of that is beneficial for me, that hasn't necessarily, I don't think, been the building blocks for where I am today. My work has looked a little bit differently. So yes, there has been that therapy over the years. But for me personally, the one thing I found about this was I'm very self-aware in terms of I know all of the trauma that I've gone through. I know what has brought me to the person that I am today. And I understand why I act the way I do, why I used alcohol, all of that kind of stuff. I know, I understand that. And I'm very, very self-aware on that. So for me, every time I started going and seeing a therapist or going down that route and trying something that was basically me sitting and talking about my emotions and delving into what they looked like and how they felt and why I was the way I was, I would come out feeling worse than when I went in. And then that would last for a while. So I was like, I just can't do this to myself. And I think, so the biggest game changer for me was actually having a coach. And rather than focusing on the past and where I've come from, acknowledging that and absolutely kind of working through those emotions and knowing why I am the way I am. It's about where I want to be. It's like, how do I get here? So it's focusing on this here and now piece and being able to understand the person that I am, but also not that, who do I want to be? Like, where do I see myself going in my life? What does that look like? And, I think the beauty in that, moving through that emotional pieces, and what I think people maybe miss is that you can, yes, you are somebody now, and the person, and it's generally a small child, the small person, the small Keelie inside of me that has been trying to keep you safe up until this point. And the most beautiful thing about that is that you don't have to stay where you are. You can create whoever you want to be, whatever that looks like. Again, as long as you know your why, you understand your values and what that looks like. So yes, it's working through those emotions, it's working through those feelings, but it's again beautiful, because then you can create this person on the other side of that, in terms of, yeah, this is where I want to be, and this the actions, the attributes, the behaviors, like the characteristics that are all going to get me to this point. So how do I want to align with that person? And I think once you know what this looks like, this in the present is easier. So yes, therapy, it's amazing, and it does work for so many people like yourself. But for me, I just really found it hard to sit in that being so much, and just wanted to be kind of, how can I be present and move forward into my future? So that is what was a game changer for me, was just finding a good coach that would help me navigate that.
I'm with you. I can also say I haven't hired a coach. I've definitely been on the cusp of that, because I see a lot of other people utilizing that, and having a life coach just seems like such the ticket to go to get to that why place, to get to where you're supposed to be. And the therapy definitely is rough, and sitting in it for too long. There was times where I'm like, screw this. I can't do this anymore. But it was part of the process, right? I was never going to go anywhere if I kept drinking. That I knew. I never was going anywhere. And so I had that. It was a total brick wall there. So it's like, okay, well, let's go get a little uncomfortable for a short period of time. Just like when you go exercise or you go for a run or whatever it might be. Like, yeah, it's not always comfortable. It is uncomfortable, but you always feel better at the end. So I compared it to that of like physical activity, lifting weights or whatnot. I know that's hard, but I always feel better at the end. So I put that together with therapy as well. But I wanted to ask you, what is your why? You talked about thinking about this and asking yourself that. What is Keelie's why in the current moment?
I just want to be the best version of myself. And I also want to share my story. I think I have grown up people pleasing, and feeling like I've not been enough all of my life. And I want to help make a difference in the lives of others, because I don't want anybody to feel the way that I felt much of my life. And I think that's why I call myself like the sober hype girl as well, because, I think society puts so much pressure on us, and I think women specifically as well. We're, and somewhat a little different to men, because I feel like there's this pressure on how we should look, how we should act, how we should speak, how we should dress. And I know that there's just so many women out there that are struggling, men as well, in terms of, not really knowing who they are. And whether that is booze, whether that's, they're sober and, their kids have left home and they've spent their whole time like caring for their children, and they just don't really know who they are. And that's my why, is how can I help these people get from this area here into this beautiful, thriving space where they know themselves, they're happy, their baseline level of happiness has improved. And that's my why, because I think, one, my story is powerful. Two, how I am in terms of my energy and my age and all of that kind of thing is powerful, and it's proof that consistency and making, these small changes, it's taken me, and yourself as well, it takes you a while to get here. And I think part of the challenge that we live in the society today is we live in an Uber Eats society. So we are just wanting quick fixes on everything, dopamine, like weight loss, everything. And nobody seems to want to put the work in. And they look at people like us now and it's like, oh yeah, they're amazing. How can I be like you? And then it's, you have to be ready to make those changes. And I think for me, I want to be able to help people do that a little bit quicker and get to where they want to be and flourish in, rather than just stuck in this like void of not knowing anything about themselves. And I think you'll attest to this as well in terms of it's a beautiful thing when you know yourself and you have created these boundaries and you're kind of living in accordance to the person that you are and that you want to be. It's something really nice in that.
It is really nice. It can also be super lonely too, I have found, and I knew it going in. I'm like, oh no, like I'm going to quit drinking. This is going to have a total effect across the board with people I hang out with and the way I operate in scenarios and places that I'm probably not going to hang out in anymore. So there was that episode of like, ooh, I'm feeling it now. I'm not going to reach out for the drink because that's not going to help anything, but I am going to have to sit in this moment and see what this feels like. And time will pass. As you know, I mean, I'm shocked at how long it's been, even for myself and obviously for you sharing when you had your last drink. Now it just seems like time's just accelerating. I'm like, whoa, I needed to slow down. Like I don't have enough time in the days anymore to do all these things that, our why, if you will, which is so fun. And we see it on social media everywhere. People are figuring out their why, and it's not necessarily money or financially driven, right? That's the first thing we always think we need to motivate ourselves to go after. But now it's sharing these powerful stories like you're doing. And it is powerful. I mean, and certainly like you mentioned for women, for other women to empower other women to say, we don't need drinking. We are queens, like you describe. I love that. Queens and legends. I told you that. You wrote me that. I'm like, this woman's amazing. Like I've never been called legend in my life, so I think that's so neat that you're doing that. You're putting such a positive spin on this and you're putting in the effort, not just for yourself, but for everybody else listening. And I think it's so cool. So kudos to you. Proud of the work you're doing and keep it up. Are you currently coaching other women outside of the social media realm?
Yes. So that's what I do.
Cool.
And interestingly, many of the women that I'm working with are actually in their 50s. And have been going, they've got to a stage in their life where they're wanting to move past things and just feel like they're really stuck. And so, which is nice because, they see the changes that I've made. So I work with them around a lot of kind of their belief system. What are their values? Like, how can we create these boundaries without you like coming across that you're just not wanting to be around people? How can we really align with the person that you are? And not just women, actually. I've been coaching quite a few men who are also going, whether there's, and again, I go back to, whilst I really love this sober curiosity piece, and that has been the biggest change in my life. That's not necessarily what the coaching focuses on, because my premise of what I'm doing is I want people to be able to love themselves so much that they just don't feel like they need to reach for the alcohol to fill that void. So for me, yes, that curiosity piece is amazing, but it's about the whole picture. It's like, how can we challenge your beliefs? Because a lot of what keeps cropping up is these beliefs. We also, I think, as much as everybody I coach is a people pleaser and has spent their whole life pleasing people. And one of the interesting things that about this is that we all do it, and we all spend our lives trying to please everybody else. And what we don't realize is that nobody gives a shit. Everybody else is too concerned about trying to please everybody else and thinking about it in their own head. So even though we're like, oh my gosh, this person is just going to think that, I've upset them or I've done this, they're too conscious about going, oh my God, this person just thinks that I've done this or I've done that. And so, yeah, that is my premise, is that I just want to help people change in terms of navigating this space of loneliness, as you speak about, because they know they're ready to change and they want that support. And my ultimate goal from this is similar to, we have the sober community in Instagram. I want to create this community of people where everybody can support each other and help each other thrive and just become the best versions of themselves. Because we have enough shit going on. Life is hard enough without ourselves giving ourselves a hard time. And so I try and kind of help remove that judgment and just give people a safe space that they can just be and thrive.
Oh, that's so cool. It is such cool work and such a joy to be able to help others. I've found in just sobriety and alcohol being the subject that we can do that, or at least it's kickstarted that process for us. And that it just is so fulfilling to be able to share these stories and to tell people like, hey, you are so amazing without this substance. I want you to know that. And I want to say that to anybody listening, like you are so worth getting rid of this. You do not need it to be this charming, hilarious, dancing, funny, amazing person, life of the party. If you are that when you drink, guess what? You are still that when you're sober. And you could attest to that. Everything you post, you're dancing around like, yeah, it looks like you're drunk half the time. I had I had one of my buddies the other day. He told me, he goes, Kristian, you're one of the drunkest sober people I've ever met in my
What a
life. And I
compliment.
said, dude, that's the best compliment I've had in my entire life. Thank you for that.
Yes.
So anybody who drinks and likes who they are when they're drinking, to an extent, like obviously if you start, going off the deep end, you start getting angry, but those little things that you enjoy about who you are when you're drinking, guess what? That is you 100%. And I thought I needed to be me. I know you did too. So now that we don't need it to be us, holy shit balls. Like that just completely opens up the world for us of like, wait, I could be a total goofball, life of the party without having a drink. Like that's amazing because now I have so many more possibilities. I get to go home early and be like, peace, guys, enjoy the 12 pack. I got shit to do in the morning. I'm excited to get up in the morning and see the sunrise and squeeze my kids and have a nice, cup of coffee if that's your thing. Like it's just a cool transition. I think it's awesome that you're doing that from the coaching standpoint. And certainly the subject of self-worth. Can you touch on that? Is that something you've seen across the board as like the common theme, or maybe there's a different common theme that you've seen?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like we're brought up, I think especially our generation, we were on the cusp of when it was kind of our grandparents' generation, where it was like, you don't talk about feelings, you're not allowed to express feelings. And I think the more we've gone along in years of this kind of psychological understanding of what we do to our kids and the impact that what we say and how we behave and all of that kind of stuff has an impact on our children. For instance, I had ADHD, I had asthma, allergies to absolutely everything growing up. I was different at school because I had eczema all over me, and people's children didn't want to play with me or was told they shouldn't play with me because, I had something that was contagious. And so for me, I always thought I was a problem child. That like everything in my life had kind of led up to me just being a problem. And I think there's this self-fulfilling prophecy that once you label your child or anybody into those boxes, it's very easy for somebody to fall into those categories because of the labels that we give them. And then we get into our adult life, and again, we kind of, as women, we meet somebody, we settle down, we have kids, which, is all normal with society. But then we're told that to be enough in society, we should be married. And, I separated from my husband last January. And the biggest thing that people say to me, oh, what is like your love interest? And I'm like, are there any men on the scene? And I'm like, we have this thing in society, again, those standards that we hold people to that deemed normal in society and enough from society that I should be in a relationship. And that is what validates me as a person. And so I think, that is the biggest thing. We're all going through these changes of you're not enough, like whatever, whether that's you, whether that's me, there's all these things that link back to our beliefs from when we are children, and abandonment issues, and not being able to put boundaries up. And especially as a woman, if you've had children, is that you've spent so much of your life trying to care for these children, give them everything, that when they're grown up into adults, like you don't really know who you are because you've tried to please everybody else. So that self-worth piece is huge. That people pleasing is huge. But also boundaries and kind of not knowing who you are as a person. So, on the other side of not feeling enough, it's like, I just don't know who I am. I don't know what my values are. I don't know what I like and what brings me joy. And it's rediscovering all of those little things, and how amazing to be able to do that and be like, actually, I like this kind of music, or I really enjoy, and it's quite, beautiful to be able to see when people go through that transition. But it's quite vulnerable and it's confronting for some people, because they were like, I had a lady the other day, she was like, well, actually, I like all this different kind of music, and I don't just have one. And I was like, well, but that's okay. Like, that's amazing. You know that you like this. Like, that is just, because normally you'd be like, yeah, I'll just do this because you want to do that. So it's, there's a lot of different themes out there, but the themes are the same with everybody.
Yeah. Is there anything specific that came up for you as far as like, wait, I love these things, but I stopped doing them because society thought, oh, that's so lame, Keelie. Why do you listen to that? Or why do you dance like that? Or why do you do this? Is there anything that popped up for you through sobriety?
Yes. So this is probably, this is going really, really deep, but actually just being me, that was the biggest thing, because I just didn't know me. So it wasn't a case of, and I'm still like, so whilst I quit 4 years ago, like it was 2 years ago when I had my last drink, there were a few times where I violently threw myself off the wagon. But for me, I just never knew who I was. I think I just spent my whole life, pretty much my whole life, masking and trying to people please, or, just trying to keep myself safe. Like young Keelie is like, no, I'm in here. Like, let me be safe. And so, I think everything for me, I just felt like I was wrong. And being an adult now and being 40, I think there's 41, there's this thing about we shouldn't be having fun. And now I'm like, what brings me, like, what is fun for me? And like, as I mentioned, the wedding I went to, my sister's, and my other sister has 3 beautiful kids, and I connected with like the 3-year-old. We're little besties. And that's just because we were on like the same wavelength. My sister was like, I didn't know where his personality came from, and now I see you together. I'm like, oh my gosh. And there's that thing, this fun, that as we adult, life should not be fun. And so I think like me as a person, but also just what does that mean in terms of having fun? And you spoke about it being goofy, like just being random and telling jokes, and there's all this stuff that we shouldn't be doing, but who cares? Like, we're here for one life. Like, let's just go out and let's just live it as we can.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I've been finding myself in that same mode of just I've always been just a goofy, smiley type of person, but I was also didn't feel strong self-worth growing up. I mean, that's the truth. I had my savior was athletics, because that was the one thing that I was good at. And so I got friends, I got respect. I could just settle in there and do my thing and no one would ask any questions, right? But if I start saying things like, oh, I love electronic music, which I do, by the way, like that, anybody who knows me well, that is my number one genre of music by a fucking mile. But I always get crap about it in high school and whatnot. I'd let my friends give me crap instead of being like, I don't care what you think. I've had such a hard time people pleasing, not setting boundaries for myself. And I've literally just let that power go and get walked all over and ruined because of it. So that I agree with you. It's been finally figuring out like, oh, I'm totally worthy regardless of being good at sports or anything else. And oh, I can say no to a lot of things. I can just be myself. Holy shitballs. This just made life way easier. And I don't have to give a shit about what anybody else is giving a shit about, right? Like, oh, I got to go, go after this goal or do that this way or eat these things. And I'm just like, I kept trying to like keep up with everybody and it ruined me. And now I'm like, I will ask myself internally, Kristian, is this really aligned with who you are right now? If it doesn't, fuck it. Say goodbye. I don't care and not feel guilt. But that is a whole other story of like trying to rewire my brain because I always fall back in the trap out regardless of booze. That's a whole different topic, but it's just more of like, oh, I'm catching myself trying to do things that aren't aligned with me. So beautiful that you're doing that, Keelie. It's huge. And for anybody you're coaching and anybody listening, I mean, it is. That's where the beauty lies with this. Alcohol, drinking booze is one topic. But if you skip past that and go, okay, I use this a lot. I know it's crappy for me. Why do I keep doing it? And start there, that's where you start to unpeel these layers. Are like, uh-oh. Now I see there's way more here than just this bottle of beer. Like, oh, this is scary, but don't stop. Like, reach out to community, like Keelie said, and do the one little step and just kind of dabble with this a little bit and get uncomfortable. Because if you stay in this dopamine comfort spikes for the rest of your life, misery ensues, as you know. I had one other question. Now I completely forgot it. What do you want to say to someone who's listened to this full episode and they're like, okay, I think I'm ready, but I still feel like sobriety is really boring. I don't want to do this therapy garbage they're talking about. Like, what do you have to say to someone like that who's on the fence, kind of critical about it, but they deep down know they should go?
Oh, that's a tough one, isn't it? Because I think everybody's got that tipping point that's very different. I would firstly say you are enough. Like, that is the biggest thing for me. And I think understanding that. And I also think that there's no judgment. We have all been there in some shape or form. And I think one of the biggest switches in that piece is actually feeling like everybody is the same. Everybody wants exactly the same from society, from life in general. We all want to feel loved and we all want to feel safe. And so I would challenge you to think what that looks like for you. I would also say, just give it a go. And like me, when I was going down that route, if it doesn't work and after 90 days you want to go back to it, then do it. If you feel like actually that is what is holding you back and you want to go back to it, then there's no one stopping you. But what is 90 days out of your life in terms of the grand scheme of things? So just try it. You can go back to it if that's what you want.
So what Keelie's actually saying is you just need to fucking do it right now.
Yeah.
Okay? Just cut the BS. We're tired of sugarcoating this. If you've listened this long, it's been over an hour. What are you waiting for? Like, let's go. I say this, Keelie, because I had a buddy of mine. He was very curious and he called me up, and this is the first time I knew about him in my dad group, and it was the first time he calls me. And he's very curious. He's asking questions, and after half an hour, I go, dude, just fucking do it. I said, just go do it. Like, after 90 days, I guarantee you're going to feel great. And I'm here to support you. Like, at the end of the day, we can't just sit and dilly dally. You got to make a decision, right? It's when we're in limbo a lot of times in our life, or we're just spinning our wheels. We're not getting anywhere. But anybody listening here knows. They totally know. Like, I do need to do this. Like, I was that guy for a decade. I was that guy. Kristian, you got to stop drinking. You got to stop drinking. And I kept trying it over and over. No, I'm good. I'll moderate. Nope, can't do that. Oh, I'll keep trying. And it's just like, Kristian, you're never going to get anywhere unless you quit. Yeah. So finally I had to push it so hard and just say, okay, that's it. I'm going to go a year. that turned in, 8 months. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to be done. And sometimes it could be that easy, guys and gals listening. Honest to God, this doesn't have to be this crazy ordeal. If you've got rock solid people around you, like Keelie and I, anybody else in the sober world, you could do this quickly. I know I could have done this 10 times as fast if I didn't white knuckle it in my typical fashion, which I figured out. Kristian just tunnel visions his way, never asked for help.
Yeah. We all
Instead
do.
of just like leaning in. Yeah, you probably done the same thing.
Yeah, we all do. And we have the most beautiful community online. Reach out to one of us, have this conversation. Honestly, yeah, we're all here to support. We've all been there, and we've all got our stories to share. And the more people we can support, and the more people that we can just bring along on their journey and our journey, and so just reach out.
Yeah, so if people do want to reach out to you, how do they do that?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, the Sober Hype Girl. And I also have a website, which is keelielouise.com.au. Please feel free to reach out, drop me a DM. Love to hear from you. Love to hear just your sober story. If you've got any questions, you're curious. I also have a big library of tools that I'm adding to. So if anybody's got any feedback or things they want, add into that. But it's all free. So there's FAQs on there. There's stuff around the scientific impact that alcohol has on us, understanding your why, the 10 steps that help me get there, and some journaling prompts as well to help you get curious. So download them from my website.
That is rad. Yeah, the Sober Hype Girl. We're bringing hype to sobriety as we should. It's happening. I mean, you see it everywhere. NA beers, NA drinks, people talking about it. It's awesome because it needs to happen. It's ruining so many great people, almost ruined two of people right here, as we know. And so I could talk to you for hours, Keelie. This has been so awesome. I love your story. I love your energy. I love the hype, everything that you bring to the table. I hope anybody listening reaches out to Keelie. She's been amazing. I've just known her for a short stint, but I knew right away when she reached out that this is someone I wanted to connect with. So cool to have you on this show. And just a reminder, anybody who is unaware of my Instagram following as well, I've got Join Sober Identity as my page. I just like to share my story, hype up sobriety, just like Keelie does. And we just want to help you. Honestly, that's why we're doing what we're doing in our free time, mind you. That's how passionate we truly are about this topic. And like we both said, please reach out if you have any questions. None of them are dumb. We've all thought them. We've all asked them. So please make it happen. But Keelie, thank you so much for joining us today. And hopefully we can do it again here soon in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kristian. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We'll chat with you soon.
Bye.